Hey guys, we have the 2000 from Semogue. Used it yesterday, and I like it a lot. Yesterday we did a face lather with it because I just wanted to try a nice big Boar brush with a PDP face lather in it. It just wasn't all that enjoyable the first pass. I got a decent lather from it, but then there just wasn't very much soap left in the brush. And I lathered for about a minute and 20 seconds, maybe a minute and a half. Now, maybe the solution is to just lather for longer. Well, I mean, that just seems excessive. But if you truly love face lathering, then I guess that's what you need to do, at least for this particular soap. Here is the PDP number 63. It's a nice soap for the budget. It's a practical soap. It gives you a slick lather. It smells great, in my opinion. And it's a quad milled soap, so it'll last you a very long time. And you can usually get it for about $10 or close to it. And if it lasts you a year and a half, then that's a money well spent. But you're just not going to get a luxurious, creamy lather from it. It's just not that. It's a vegan soap and it doesn't have that tallow to kind of come in and help it out. It's not as good of a vegan formulation as some other vegan soaps out there. But what it does, and I believe what it's supposed to do, are all the things that I've just outlined, and it does them really well. So today's goal was twofold. The first, let's revisit the same soap we had yesterday with the same brush we had yesterday. Let's lather for the same duration, load for the same duration that we did yesterday. I'm going to do a minute and 20 seconds just in case that's the actual time instead of a minute and 30. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bowl lather instead of face lather and just see how the lathers differ, if any. I think they probably will. All right, so put that away. Just like yesterday, during this talk, during my gear prep, the puck of soap has been soaking with water. This Gillette Silver Blue has about 10 uses on it. It is the second reason the second thing I am trying to accomplish in today's shave is just to test out this razor with a nice blade that I just so often enjoy with many razors, the GSB, Gillette Silver Blue. This is the 40s style, vintage Gillette Super Speed. Now the flare tips are the other kind of Super Speed, another kind. And see this guy, he's pretty much parallel with the whole handle. He has the knurling here instead of the different look of the flare tips, and then the knob here doesn't flare out like it does with the flare tips. The head is pretty similar, probably has a slightly different geometry. It could be identical. I don't think so. My face seems to think it doesn't. I think it feels a little smoother than the Super Speeds. I think it holds the blade a little more closely to the edge. I think it feels more comfortable and secure. So, and I think it's just a great classic look. These are inexpensive, at least they should be, but you should be able to pick one up, 15 bucks, maybe able to pay $20 or $25 on eBay and get a set of about 5 different vintage Gillettes in decent shape and have one of these or 2 of these be in that set. And so that's not a strange happening. I've seen that a good many times. So it doesn't take too much money to kind of get a decent collection of these inexpensive vintage Super Speeds and other type of razors like that. The brush we're going to use, I told you that first, we're good there. I told you the blade and the razor. The razor is now in the blade, so let me throw the water on my face. 24 hours of growth, and I do have cold water. I'll be bringing in a little bit of warm just to bring it up to tepid. And then at the end of today's video, I'm going to discuss gel tips. I had a question online about that from Bob. And so I'm gonna give some info. I did answer him in the comments, but sometimes it's fun to have visuals. And so if you'd like to know more about that, then you can stick around for that part of the video. Or of course you can fast forward if you want to skip all this lather stuff. All right, so let's bowl lather some PDP and see how things go. Just like before, I'm going to pour out the bloom water, the soak water. It could be used, pour a little bit in your bowl, but I want this to be as fair a contest as possible. So we've got a soaked, and the face lather yesterday, I believe, I took a shower before my shave yesterday. Did not do that today. And so this has not actually soaked for as long. So that gives more advantage slightly to the face lathering. But I bet we're good. So as my usual, I'm going to remove some of the water from here, and let's you know what, maybe a fairer contest, because less water may mean more digging into the soap. Let's go ahead and put some water back on it. So just like I did yesterday, bring it up here. I'm letting any gravity pull any water away if it wants to. And now we'll start loading up. A minute and 20 seconds. Everything ready here? All right. So there's a 10 mark. So we'll go to the 30 mark on the next minute. Just kind of medium pressure, just like yesterday. Yeah, we're getting nice overflow, but it's very airy, very light. So I don't worry about trying to capture that lather and conserve it. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could, but I don't worry about it. This is a wonderful brush. I really enjoy it. It's got a nice, a larger knot than most of the other Semogues. It's got a nice long loft in general. Not a lot of tip splitting yet. This is just like its 23rd use or something like that. And so it is going to get even softer. Looking forward to it. I have brought in 2 O-rings, almost to my stopping point. I have brought in 2 O-rings to rein in the knot a little bit. Otherwise it would be larger and more open. Obviously that is a preference thing that each shaver can work with. So this looks similar to yesterday's lather. We did have some pretty good stuff. Appear on the soap by the time we had finished loading. It looked encouraging, and indeed the first pass was reasonable. And so now I'm going to mix it for just a minute in the bowl. This is a Roger Quintero lather bowl, 3D printable if you have a 3D printer. And the plans are in the description of the video. If you have access to if you don't, you can actually use an online service like makexyz.com or some other different ones that are out there. I've never used one, but I've heard reports from a few of my viewers. It can be expensive, so really watch that. I got on one site, put in just as a plastic and uploaded the file. This is the extra large version of the bowl that's in the files. And they wanted to charge me $78. Now maybe my resolution setting wasn't quite right. See, you pick some settings, at least with the site I went to. And obviously the higher resolution, maybe the nicer the bowl is, the stronger it is, maybe. So you can see some threading, with it. And so maybe that eliminates some of those, kinds of issues. But I wasn't going to pay that much. But I've heard people be able to find it for $20 or $30. My friend Buzz online was able to find somebody local because of the makexyz.com. It's a broker site that hooks you up with somebody who has a printer and is kind of leasing out time and will print stuff for you, because basically you just email them the files or something like that. 2 teaspoons of water now in the lather. So you email them the files, and then they start printing. And I guess you maybe send them payment, however means there is. You could pick your medium, like ABS plastic or some different kinds. I don't know. Anyway, there's some public libraries that have, for educational purposes, just personal use. Now, this bowl took a while to print, like a whole day, I think is what somebody said. So, there is that. Now, I'm not getting tons of lather. Here, and I'm a little see, look at that. I'm a little concerned that if I add more water, it's going to wash out the lather. Oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't have added as much water as I did, because I started out with a sopping wet brush. I'm not used to that. So I may have kind of washed out my lather a little bit. Well, yeah, there's just not much lather here to do the job. And so it may be that, you know, with this soap, if the brush is soft at all, if I have used Maggard's SHD knot, which has tons of hairs, you know, it's very dense brush, and so it's got some backbone as well, a lot more than this. And so it was able to get up enough soap from the puck to last, to give me nice, like 7 or 8 passes of lather. And so I know that's possible with some brushes, but this is just such a hard soap that, you know, with soft brushes, you may just have to crank on it for a while, because as you can see, there is just not that much lather here. I don't think in this case this is going to give me a better lather than than I experienced yesterday with just the brush face lathering. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to assume that I have overwatered this, and I am going to redo what I just did. But I'm going to pause you so you don't have to watch it. Redo what I just did, but I'm going to add water a little bit more slowly, pay more attention to it, that sort of thing. I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and load with you kind of present, because as the video 04 is my start time there. The video time duration ticker is my stopwatch. So let's load this for 1 minute and 20 seconds again, and it'll probably actually be a little bit more of a good comparison, because yesterday, like I said, the soap soaked for a little bit longer than it did today. So I started at 04, so 24 on the next minute is going to be the goal here. Now, because I don't need my stopwatch for the lather building, I'm just going to start cranking on that in the bowl with you paused, and you won't have to watch that part. But also, I went ahead and wanted to show you this just so that you knew that I wasn't trying to. I was kind of staying honest and keeping the comparison the same. All right, 24 more seconds. $14 more. With so much lather kind of flowing around here, you'd think that would just be enough without much of a problem, wouldn't you? All right, I'm going to build this up, and I'll see you in a second. All right, well, got a pretty good amount of soap lather on the brush here, and a little bit in the bowl. Not as much as I usually get with my other soaps. So it seems pretty clear, like I said earlier, that if you have a soft brush, you're going to need to work on that PDP for a while, or maybe let it soak for longer. Like start it soaking when you are doing something else. and then come back to it. I think with PDP, I like to run it a little drier than usual, and so I'll look at all these peaks and that texture there. That's not something I usually stop at. I usually push it push it more water into it so I don't get that. But this soap is a little different. All right, let's just try it. I know I'm not going to have an abundance of soap, but let's just see if there's a slight edge to the bowl lathering versus the face. Maybe I don't have as much waste going down after that first pass, going down the drain. As usual, water on my face. So all I did was add a half a teaspoon. So I had the amount that was in the brush like you saw, and then half a teaspoon is what it took to whip up this lather. Just like yesterday's, this feels nice on the face. Actually, it feels better because I'm not rubbing the concentrate on my face. Now the good thing about face lathering is that your face acts as a sensor and can really tell you a lot about the lather as you work it in that first pass. Is it too dry? Does it feel pasty? If it feels pasty, man, you got to throw some water on that. Work it in. Does it feel creamy? Does it feel slick? You know? Because the lather's also mixed up, I don't have wet portions flying off the brush as easily as I did with the face lather. This is definitely not a luxury, type shave. Now we're going to switch to the painting motions instead of the circular. Now there are some brush makers, I think like Simpson maybe or something like that say not to do circles on your face, because it twists the brush hairs together and, harms them or something. Talking about that online with some other guys. They were saying their guess is that it's almost like a insurance kind of thing where they can claim, well, we're not going to replace your brush because you went around with it like that. I think their probably goal is to just prevent people who really press the brush in super hard and really twist it around and just abuse it from being able to claim that it's the brush's fault, So anyway, all right. Well, it's a reasonably slick lather in general from what I have experienced so far. I've been happy with it in terms of performance for the price. And sure, it's not going to kill Barrister and Mann or even Stirling in terms of performance. But it's got a great smell. It seems like they spent some good time putting together this scent. Really well done. Now sure, there wasn't much to that first pass, but at least it wasn't thin and dry like those other passes I did when I was face lathering. Let's see what we're able to pull out of the bowl now. My face may be a little bit more wet, so we'll see how the lather acts. Definitely less mess. I don't have to scrub very much because all that exfoliation that you hear people talking about, don't exfoliate right before your shave is my advice, because my understanding is that the razor does the exfoliation for you in that first pass. You don't need to exfoliate before that. I mean, unless your skin actually needs 2 different periods of exfoliation. Well, I don't think most people do. And this is feeling great. This blade, this feels a little slicker than the first pass. And the blade is just gliding through the hairs. I could feel the blade edge a little bit more. Still very comfortable on the first pass, but I could feel the edge. And this is a nice little razor. Yeah. So the Wizamet turns out is what I used previously with this guy, and he maybe built up a little bit of irritation. And I think maybe that could have been, maybe I was trying to face lather back then. Maybe I had a prickly brush. Who knows? All right, so let me rinse. Well, I tell you what, this shave is definitely, it's not luxurious by any means, but it is more enjoyable than yesterday's face lather. And I'm getting a better lather on the second pass, and definitely on the third pass. I definitely did not have this much lather to enjoy on the with the face lathering on the third pass. So I can just paint this, and I still even have a little bit left over for a touch up or something like that. So hey, look at what we can do. And I rarely do this because I just usually end up with so much. But see, look at that. I didn't have anything like this available when I was face lathering. So just for grins. So if you're looking about, one thing that Lather Bowl beats, given the same amount of load time, same brush, same soap, you will get a nicer lather across the board for each pass than you will with face lather if you go with the bowl. But like I said, some guys are fine with that because maybe they just load for longer and that fixes the whole problem for them. And this is a very comfortable pass. Nice slick. I'm able to go quite fast. If you do see that razor kind of skipping a little bit, that is normal when you have a really wet lather. I usually try to avoid that. Don't have my lathers quite that wet usually, but this feels much better than that third pass from yesterday. I'm going to take, and I still have just a little bit of lather left in the bowl, which I can put as a little touch-up spot for my trouble area that gives me so much grief. Required lots of homework years ago as I tried different things to make it work. All right, well there we go. Much more enjoyable shave than yesterday. Lather just felt better the whole time. So that's why I stick with the bowl. But I can see why people like face lather. You do get to work that brush on your face a lot. Now I still get to work it a lot with my bowl. And I think the feeling while it's doing that is actually better because I'm starting with an already made lather that's right. It's slick. It's got the cushion. It's not too dry like it is in the very beginning. It's also less messy, that sort of thing. So that's really interesting about the PDP. You're just going to have to load for a long time if you want to, even if you want a bowl lather with a soft brush, you might have to load for quite a while or soak for quite a while. Yeah, I guess you take your pick, right? All right, so I just threw on some Stirling Dunshire, their Acquadigio inspired scent. And it's a balm, and you can kind of see the whiteness, kind of like a face lotion. And that will be gone shortly, and a nice hydration through the night. Now, I told you we were going to talk about gel tips, so let's switch to that. If you're not interested or know enough about that, thanks so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this video, out of this shave. All right. So with, I think for the longest time, you had 2-band brushes like this, thicker black stripe here. And then you got 3-band. The black stripe here is thinner. You can see more of the lighter color right here. 1, 2, 3 bands. Here, 2 bands. 1, 2. And these were kind of expensive. We've got some cheaper suppliers now. And Vig Shaving, Virginia Ching, has some nice little budget priced 3-band badgers that I really enjoy. Some people don't like them too much, but I think they're a good value. And if you don't have a big budget, I think $48 is the Macedo 3-band brush, 24 millimeter, and I got the Memphis handle shaved with it just the other day, and I really enjoy it. I think it's a nice brush. And then of course with the 3-bands you can get to $300, $400 and anywhere in between. So the 3-bands have a natural softness and lack of strong backbone to the bristles. And so that's why they're so comfortable and enjoyable. Now the 2-bands, and this is a 2-band as well. It's Frank Shaving 2-band Finest. And this is I think Shave Mac calls theirs a Finest silver tip, but most people don't take a 2-band and call it a silver tip. A Shave Mac, I guess, does. But it's just a great example of the Finest. And the people apparently kind of like a little bit more scrub, a little bit more backbone, springs back into place really quickly, even when wet. But the tips aren't super soft like the 3-band. I'm guessing at some point somebody decided, hey, let's bleach these tips and make them softer. Now, I don't know when that happened. I don't know if that was 8 years ago or 50 years ago. I don't know. But what can happen after those tips have been treated is hooking. See that right there? You see all the curls? It's like one side, the hooky side of a Velcro. There you go. It may be farther away, but I think the focus is better. One side of a strip of Velcro. And these will squeeze together real easy, but because of all the hooking, these kind of resist that a little bit. Now, I believe you shouldn't really try to fluff these too much because I think the tips can break because they've been treated. They're more brittle. Okay, so they've been treated with bleach, and you can see that because look at the color. These tips have more of a natural color to them, whereas these are definitely a brighter color. I don't know if bleach is the only treatment that's used. I don't know if there are other kinds. Who knows? It's probably a trade secret with some of the brush makers, the knot makers, but probably bleach, is the one most often used. Now, when they hook like this, some people really love it because when you get it wet, these little hooks absorb water. Now, most of the time with a badger like this, the bristles don't really absorb water. Now, we discovered with the boar, they do definitely absorb water because that's what makes them flexible during the shave. Pick up a boar brush and it's all stiff until you get it wet. Badger's not that way. It doesn't absorb water except for those treated tips on some brushes, especially the ones that are hooked like this. And so you soak it before the shave. If you want to soak it just for 3 minutes or something like that, if you just want to run water over it and get after it, whatever. I do have that darn Rob Fanchurian brush that I noticed was a lot softer in the third pass than it was on the first pass. And I think that's because those tips would gel very slightly and would absorb water. And so in that first pass, with just a few minutes of soaking, they didn't have enough time to really relax and get into it and get softer. And so I started soaking it for longer, and those earlier passes, that first pass, immediately began to improve. Now, these little hooks sometimes are very desirable by certain people. They want knots that do that. Some people call them tip knots. Some companies are calling them tip knots. Gel, people say they're jelly. It'll gel up on you really nicely. And so you soak this guy, and these hooks relax, and they're like little tiny sponges. They're super soft. And then it's got the backbone of the 2-band knot. And so it can focus those tips at your face to where you're feeling that soft sponginess. That's how I like to call it. all over your face, and it can be very luxurious. Now, as for me, I'd prefer a two-band that doesn't really, you're not seeing too many hooks on this guy at all. This one does not hook and gel up, and I prefer a softer tip, a hair feeling tip instead of a spongy feeling tip. And so not every two-band will gel like this guy. Not every treated knot is going to gel, but some of them do. Sometimes those are sought after by certain guys. Nothing wrong with that if that's the way they like them. And then it's just a matter of the feel, if that's the feel that you like. To me, it feels like a bunch of little sponges, and I'd prefer maybe something a little bit more like soft hair. But that's just me. And when the tips are gelled, when the tips are treated in such a way that it makes them hook as they dry. Oh, and when at the end of the shave, they'll clump together in little pieces, and you'll be able to see that easily on videos. Now, I think I have some videos with this guy out there. If you search my channel for Frank Shaving, and you look for the finest, Frank Shaving Finest, I bet you'll find one or two shaves with this guy. And at the end of the shave, they'll clump together in a jelly kind of way. And then as they dry, they'll start to turn this way and hook and that sort of thing. So that's the gelling and the hooking. And the final thing to say is that it does seem like, according to the research I've done, it does seem like the bleaching a knot to the extent that it hooks could reduce the lifespan of the knot. Maybe turning it from a 15-year knot into a 7-year. I mean, maybe that might be the kind of thing you're looking at. Probably not, reducing it down to a 1-year instead of 15-year. But if you have a knot brushes in rotation, 4 brushes, even if there are 4 tip knots, 4 jelly knots, then if they last that 7 years, then you're looking at 28 years of enjoyable shaves if you're a person who likes those jelly knots. And so a lot of people don't really pay too much attention to the fact that it might reduce the lifespan of the brush. That's what they want to feel when they shave, and so that's what they go for. And if they have to buy a new brush in 10, 15, 20 years because it kind of lost its softness or in some another way, then they're fine with that. So just be aware, just in case you're thinking you're buying a lifetime brush, because some of these jelly knots are in specialized handles and things like that cost quite a bit, and so you do need to know that it could be affecting the lifespan of your brush. All right, well, there we go. I hope there was some good information to you. If there was something that I didn't know or was unsure about the gelling and the tips, I tried to communicate that with you, but I've done a lot of reading and watching and about the gel knots, and so I wanted to pass on what I had found out, specifically, especially Bob, to answer some of your questions in video format as well. All right, well, happy with the shave. Yeah, if you got a soft brush, man, you need to load a long time on this PDP. 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, maybe even 3 minutes if you have a soft brush. Interesting. Unless you want a practical shave. As you could see, I had enough lather to do the job. It wasn't luxurious or anything, but it was enjoyable. Whereas the face lather, I used the same amount of loading, same amount of soap. It just wasn't enjoyable. And so there is that. So, but if you want to try to get into the luxury where you have a little bit creamier of a soap, then a slightly larger quantity of soap, then you're going to have to, with soft brushes, you're going to have to up your load time, looks like. Also possibly start with a slightly less wet brush. I kept it equal as yesterday's with a sopping wet Boar brush. And it looks like my lather did kind of need some water toward the end. So if you start with a slightly drier brush, you may have to add a little bit of water to the soap to keep, making it look like you're building some soap there. Well, there we go. I hope there was some good info in this video for you. You take care. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. Good night.